Welcome to Pratidwani, where we try to humanize science. I'm your host, GV Pawan Kumar. It is my delight, pleasure, and indeed an honor to welcome today's guest, Professor Venu Gopal Achanta. Gopal, as we know, friendly, Gopal has been actually a professor at the Department of Condensed Matter Physics and Material Sciences at Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in Mumbai. And Gopal is a pioneer in plasmonics, metamaterials, polariton dynamics, plasmon mediated enhancement effects, dielectric photonics, photonic crystal microcavities, various interesting research areas related to photonics. And in 2021, he also has taken up the responsibility of being the director of National Physical Laboratory at Delhi. So he wears the hats of a cutting edge researcher and also now a leader in terms of the science institution, which is very vital for our country. Welcome to Pratidwani, Gopal.
Thank you, Pawan, for the opportunity.
Yeah. So Gopal, as we do always in this podcast, I'll request my guests to introduce themselves right from the origins. Where were you born? When were you born? And please give us a flavor of your origins, please. Yeah.
Yes, I was born on 15th January 1972 in a small town called Palakul. So my grandfather has had a nursing home, so I was born in the hospital there. So I come from a family of doctors, where all my uncles and aunts have seven doctors in the family. My own father, so he used to look after the lands, so he was more of a farmer uh, than a doctor. Uh, yeah. So I've seen both the rural aspects as well as uh, the medical background in the family, right? And we were a large bunch of kids, about 13 kids in the family, all grew up together. So it was always fun and frolic, fightings and making up things, and it was all part of life. So growing up was fun. So my
Wow,
schoolings,
fabulous,
yeah.
fabulous. Mhm.
So So my schooling started in Palakol itself. So up to eighth, I was there in a school called Rice Millers Convent School. It was convent initially. We used to have some Anglo-Indian teacher in our kindergarten and all that. Apparently, I used to be very scared of her, and whenever attendance was taken, I was always found under the table. So that was what I've been told by my teacher, whom I met many years later, and then she remembers me as the kid who used to be under the table. So I used to call her gown teacher because she used to wear a frock. And yeah, so then yeah, in eighth, after eighth, I shifted to Guntur, uh, and I did my ninth to 12th there. Then uh, during when I wanted to be, uh, I wasn't sure what. So but along with all friends, okay, let me give NEET, let me give engineering entrances as well. So I gave JE, wanted interested in electronics, as well as from the family point of view, wanted to also get into medicine. So I also gave NEET. I didn't get either into electronics or medical seat. So then I choose bachelor's BSc in Andhra University in a college called YN College in Narsapur, which is next to my hometown Palakul. So there I did BSc with Math, Physics, and Electronics, and then I went to Central University Hyderabad for my MSc in Physics. So there, I mean, in the BSc we had good optics labs, simple experiments, interferometry, and all these things. So that gave me interest in optics and light. So then it was and I was in certain sense I was lucky to get into Central University when Professor G.S. Agarwal, Professor Datta Gupta, right there, very good people were there, and got into quantum optics. Then on, I got into several IITs and for PhD admission. So, but then Professor Agarwal suggested that getting into TIFR, so he joined the experimental group in TIFR. So that's how I ended up in in the experimental groups. So then it was like, I mean, spectroscopy. I was looking at opportunities whom I can join to do spectroscopy or something related to light. So then I joined Professor Venu for my PhD to work on semiconductor spectroscopy. We looked at exciton dynamics in how, when you go from bulk gallium arsenide to quantum wells to quantum wires, how excitons interact with other excitons interact with electrons, phonons. Right? The dimensionality dependence is what we studied. Right? So then I moved to Japan for my postdoc. It was a consortium of Japanese industry for which I worked. So this is called a femtosecond technology project. There's a national Japanese project. So I worked at the Festa Laboratories, which was the headquarters. So there I designed and demonstrated a ultra-fast all-optical switch, and then moved to NEC to work on photonic crystal microcavity. The idea was to demonstrate or work towards a uh, logic gate which works at single photon level. So then, I mean, after that, I got offer from TIFR, so I left NEC after a year and a half and came to join at TIFR. So that's how, like, I mean, that's my basic training.
Fabulous. Fabulous, fabulous. So, Gopal, we will go into some specific details about this timeline, what you just very nicely defined. Uh, Few things I want to really touch upon. One is your experience during your schooling. Uh, how was it? Were you already kind of very motivated to go into science and scientific research? And what was the kind of atmosphere at your home? And what was it for you to really think about science? Did you have any impression right at the early age?
So for, I mean, to be honest, at that age, like, so didn't had much of idea accepting medicine, because all my elder cousins,
Mm.
so they were all attempting to give medical entrance to get admission into medical colleges. So it was all surrounding, I mean, up to my own brother, like, so I was like, out of 13 I was probably 8 in the order seniority list, seventh or eighth, like, so
Wow.
it was right. So I had long influence of cousins, like, so who were all attempting this to crack the medical entrance exams. And right. So it was science, means it was just medicine. So but then evolved over time, like, so once I didn't get into engineering branch for in electronics, I thought I'll take BSc in electronics, and at that time I actually got interested into MBA. That I was thinking of actually going into MBA. Then my cousin, my eldest cousin's husband, is he was at IT Kharagpur. He was actually later at TA for postdoc, and then currently at IIT Madras. Professor M.S.R. Rao. Like, so he told me that, like, you're doing so well in the college, you're topper, this thing, that thing. Like, so why don't you try out science for 2 more years? Try the MSc, then you can do whatever you want. You don't like, you can always go back to do MBA. So try out MSc for 2 years, and that's how I continued with MSc, and then yeah, it just happened the rest.
Very nice, very nice. So it's very peculiar, isn't it, Gopal? Because at homes where there are a lot of medical doctors, there is kind of, direct or indirect pressure for them to follow that suit, because it's a very noble kind of profession, because there is quite a lot of dedication and time you have to put in. And also it probably is sometimes advantageous to have a family where there are already doctors, because they will know what it takes to become a doctor, and also what kind of dedication you have to put in. I also see that whenever I interact with you, that professionalism is very high, even with you, in spite of the fact that you're not a medical doctor but a double PhD holder. By the way, I should mention to our listeners, when Gopal went to Tokyo, he also got another PhD there, if I'm correct, right, Gopal?
Right, right. Yes. From Tokyo
Yeah.
University, I got
So
results.
yeah, that's quite amazing. We'll come to that particular point because there is also some fascinating research topics which I want to discuss. One of the aspect which I found is that right at the beginning, when you're now kind of getting exposed to this kind of medical doctors all around, was there a little bit of pressure for you to get into that stream, or you were reasonably free to take up anything?
I mean, I should thank my family for that because they're completely left free. It was like after
Mm.
10th in Andhra. I mean, even now it's just like crazy, the kind of pressure
Yeah.
students go through, right? So it's thankfully, like, so they never put any pressure. And in fact, like in my uh, first I joined a college for intermediate, as we call the plus one plus two there. Like, so I took math, physics, and chemistry. And after almost a month and a half, there was not even a single class which happened where a lecturer came, excepting for the languages. So I got like, and then the tuitions used to start, the coaching classes, the tuitions used to start at 5 a.m. was the first one. So it's like you get up in the morning, then cycle to the first tuition, which used to be math. Then from there, you go to physics tuition, then you go to. So, like, after 1.5 months, I just thought, no, this is not what I want. So I
Wondered.
came to know that, like, Kendriya Vidyalaya in Guntur started 12th. One of my friends actually shifted, so he was also our class topper. And right, so he shifted to Kendriya Vidyalaya. And then I came to know from him. So I went to the principal and said, like,
Mm.
look, I want to join. He said, no, not like that, you have to bring your guardian, right? You cannot come and ask for admission like this. So I went home, and at the time, like, I was in Guntur with my aunt, eldest aunt. Like, so I told her that, like, look, I want to take math, physics, chemistry, and biology for my 12th, and I want to join this school. Then the KV principal, he also told me that I need a TC from my college. So the same story, I went directly
Mm.
to the college principal and said, like, look, I want TC. He said, like, no, you need your guardian's signature and all that. So my aunt promptly signed, and she came to the school with me and could get the admission. Right. So that way, like, I was lucky that we are given complete freedom. In There is no pressure. Like, so whatever I wanted to do, my family supported. Especially my grandfather was a great support.
Very, very interesting. Very nice to know. It is always, a big advantage having a supportive family, because that makes a huge difference while going forward to building any kind of career. So the other point which I also wanted to kind of ask is this kind of emphasis on education. Uh, I have seen this prevalent across many different kind of cultures, especially also in the Telugu culture. The emphasis actually is quite a lot on really giving good education. Many a times one might even not have enough money, but that emphasis to give very good education is very, very highly sorted of. I'm not telling it's not there in other cultures, but I have seen that if you look at people across, let's say, the Telugu land, including Andhra Pradesh and the Telangana,
Yeah.
there is so much of effort which people put, especially parents want their kids to really get very good quality education. What is it, Gopal? Why is this kind of viewpoint which is very important? Because this actually is very critical going forward, because India needs this kind of viewpoint, that emphasis on education. And if you can just give us a little bit of your thought on that, it would be nice.
This is, I mean, it's interesting question because I mean, honestly, never thought like why this particular region
Mm.
is kind of pushy and education. But growing up, it is always like, if you don't study well, you'll end up nothing. You'll end
Mm.
up with a small, I mean, cycle shop or something, cycle repair shop, or you'll end up like that. You better study, right? So it doesn't matter. Like, so as you said, like, so people, even my friends, having maybe 100 acres in the family, the emphasis is always like, yes, you must study, you need to complete college. But there is also, I mean, many of my um, schoolmates from childhood, like, so they studied up to intermediate, and some of them graduated, but
Hmm.
eventually they take up their family business, but studies they must, right? So why,
They
i
must
i
have to.
do
Yeah.
not know, like, so but it is I do not know why. Probably just a peer pressure, because nowadays, like,
Hmm. Hmm.
every family will have at least one member outside India, right? Because I guess it's peer pressure or influence from each other, that what are the opportunities available once we study. And yeah.
True, true. That's actually a very, very important point, because this reinforcement is very critical, and also that the opportunities come from education is something which is very clear right at the beginning, when goes into it. So now that you have this kind of a background and education, you also are kind of, swimming against the tide, because coming also from South India, I know how much pressure they put children to get into engineering or medicine. And if you're really taking any path other than this, there is almost a element of ridicule, because if you're really doing BSc or something like that, it is generally not very highly valued, which is unfortunate. Again, that is another negative about that particular thing. Did you face any kind of backlash when you made a decision that you're going to go into bachelor's?
And I don't know. I mean, all my friends, or most of my friends, we were, I think, 18 boys in the class in 10th.
Hmm.
And out of that, possibly, and 17 girls, and the boys I know, because we're still very close knit gang. So out of 18, possibly 12 are engineers, three of them are doctors, and one is a chartered accountant or CS, right? I went into PhD, so right. So it's that way, like, yeah, I don't know, I mean, we never discussed, so I was lucky that way also, because I wanted to do electronics. That's I was very clear about, so I could get electronics in BSc, like, so I was happy doing that, like, so I didn't compromise going to civils, or civil, or some other branch, like, so that way, like, I was at ease with myself, so and never really had a chance to get uh, the other side of the thing, like, not yet,
Yeah.
not even an engineer.
Nice. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. So now I'm going to kind of, switch towards your experience at University of Hyderabad. That is one place I also have very high regards, and probably, in my opinion, also one of the best universities in India. And the kind of people whom you also mentioned, either GS Agarwal, Professor Datta Gupta, and Narayan Rao, and there's so many also now who are very, very good people who are working there. What is that in that physics department, Gopal? There are so many good people who have emerged out, excellent teachers, not just only in optics, because we both are in optics. We also know quite a lot of people there, because there are so many good researchers. But in addition to that, for example, high energy physics, condensed matter physics, there have been some excellent researchers and teachers. That is a unique combination in University of Hyderabad. And also the university itself is one of the great kind of institutions, which actually deserves more credit than generally people give. Could you just touch upon your experience of having studied there, and also interacting with people, and also the kind of exposure you got there?
Right. I think Professor A.K. Bhatnagar and
Hmm.
Professor G.S. Agarwal, so they were the first members who started the entire department, and they focused on quality hiring, and that showed in um, in the performance of students as well as the university itself, right? So the um, I mean, just to show, say some instances where, uh, like why the university and how the students benefited from the policies at those times are, uh, we had the student body and there is a student representative
Mm.
from the MSc, right? So I happened to be in one of the years, like, so I was the student rep, and for some reason, like, I got psyched and then I didn't go to the faculty meeting. So the student rep was supposed to attend every faculty meeting. I didn't attend it, and Professor Agarwal called me and said that, like, look, you didn't come for the meeting. We wanted to hear the student side of the story, right? So you didn't give it. So they were listening to students. They were continuously upgrading the course content. It used to be. I used to joke that we had this lecture hall complex where all the lectures used to happen. So we used to joke among ourselves. So I coined the name that, like, so it's a slaughterhouse, right? I mean, the kind of pressure used to be that first 2 weeks in a semester used to be breeze. Then starts the first internal exams, and the internal exams happen almost like every week. There is at least one internal exam, or you have assignments to be submitted, and you have the midsems, you have the end sems, right? It's completely jam packed, and continuously under pressure to uh, complete the syllabus and go on and on, like that. And but the teachers were excellent in optics, like, so one of the reasons you mentioned, Professor Narayan Rao, right? Like, so the one of the I mean, these are excellent teachers because in the lab, for example, we used to have, um, right at the beginning in the optics lab, it was defined to us. Look, we'll give you the objective. You read, you come back. When you come to the lab, you have to ask what uh, optical components are needed and how many components are needed, right at the beginning, right? Now if you later, if you come back and say that, like, I want one more mirror or one more lens, like, we'll subtract some marks. So you plan your experiment, right? So that inculcated, like, so that planning, thinking about experiment before actually going to the optic table was very, very important. And we had this experiment. So whether it's I mean, Fresnel rings or something, like, so we used to be two of us doing each experiment. And I had a partner who was also very good, um, Krishna Prasad. I mean, he quit physics, but he's got into leather research, and I don't know where he is. But yeah, so we used to both work together in tandem. Like, so one of us used to align the optics, and the other one is looking at the fringes and all those things.
Mm.
So we are supposed to do it for 2 full afternoons, and we got the signal in uh, something like half an hour on the first day. So then went and called Professor Narayan Rao and said that, like, look, we got the fringes. He said, like, oh, is it so early? Okay, so he came, he just looked, he turned some things and then said, like, where are they? Come on, work again. Okay. So then I asked, like, so why did you do that? He said, like, look, if you get it right the first time, you will never learn, right? If everything works the first time, there is nothing to learn, and that's not the right way to go, right? So do it again, and right. So it's like that, like, so then when we went to when I joined Vengulikar's lab, like, so it was again like that, like, it's like, do one measurement, not enough. You say that, like, you need to repeat the measurement at least twice. There should be three sets of data. And how do we make sure? You make sure that you measure 1 milliwatt, 2 milliwatt, 3 milliwatt, 4 milliwatt in steps of one. Then when you repeat it, you do zero point 0.5, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, so that you have the in between data points. And when you plot all of them, they should match. And then the third time, you randomly repeat some powers so that you make sure that they match within error. So it was the teachers, like, which made the difference at university. So these are kind of small things, but which actually make people got into optics and do well later on.
Wonderful, wonderful. This is actually such an important lesson, as you mentioned, because very rarely do you get anything working right at the beginning, right at one go, right? Because that is a lesson which we learn in optics lab. Uh, Invariably, it would be because of a fluke that it might actually work right away at the beginning. In fact, there's so much of parameters which will go into any kind of measurement or any kind of alignment. This is actually something very important. Students who are listening to this should actually really take this as an important lesson, because there is so much to learn and to go beyond what is really working, because the failures really teach you a lot of things in doing stuff. So in that sense, this I've also heard a lot of people who have graduated from University of Hyderabad to have very good balance between the theoretical and experimental physics. In fact, even in your own case, you actually are very kind of comfortable in going between both the things. And I've seen so many other people also. For example, Nirmal, who is also a faculty there, also actually has some that flair of that doing optics, and so many of the students who have graduated from that place. I have had PhD students who have graduated from University of Hyderabad who have very similar kind of thing. It's a very unique thing, because it's not like they have very kind of superficial knowledge. They really have reasonably in-depth knowledge. What is it, Gopal? What actually goes into that foundation? And there again, there is an important lesson for all of us to learn. Could you please
Okay.
elaborate a little bit if you can?
So it again comes from the seniors. So there, with
Mm,
Professor Agarwal there in the department, it was always like there were healthy discussions, whether it is experimental work or theoretical work. There
mm,
were discussions happening, and we had this continuous stream of visitors in the department. And it was always like Professor Agarwal used to come and say, "My friend Simon is coming, okay," or "My friend somebody is coming from
mm,
US." Like so, he used to organize these talks, and we were all part of them. So that's one thing. And second thing is from the PhD student perspective. Even for example, Professor Dattagupta, I know till 2 years ago when he was
mm.
active in the university, like so he used to call students, he used to talk to fellow colleagues, talk to them, listen to their recent results and all that. So that way, like that theory experiment interaction, both sides, there were discussions which were going on, right? Some of the people hated it, obviously, because not everything is understandable, right? And when we're doing the work, like unless we do 3 4 different say like papers worth of work, we'll not really understand what the complete physics is, right? So but then these become very tough, like and students not all enjoy it or appreciate it, but then certainly like after graduating they realize, we all realize the importance of it. So I think that importance coming from the top down, like so where the seniors were saying, and the respect for the
Mm.
seniors, especially with Professor Agarwal, and there's no question of arguing or saying anything. And the other point is that, like, so not just them, look at people like Professor Chaturvedi or Professor Srinivasan.
Mhm.
Professor Srinivasan was a big bully, right? But he used to teach things in such a simple manner. What is Lagrangian? Nothing. It's just like energy, energy conservation. You equal. So it was like so made so easy to take any complex problem and say that, like, yeah, you just do potential energy, kinetic energy. What is the big deal in it, right? So and on the other extreme, like so Professor Subhash Chaturvedi is like,
Mm,
he used to explain to students, right, in repeat, and then he used to find one
mm.
student sitting in one corner with a question mark face. He used to go to that student and ask a question, and then there's no answer. He used to, and then start all over again. He used to explain the whole thing again, just because that one student in. So that was
One
amazing.
student.
Teachers which made the difference, and the interactions which actually uh, created that atmosphere.
Remarkable,
And for
remarkable.
me
In fact, yeah,
sorry,
please
I
go
was
ahead.
just saying that to continue with it, like Professor Vengur, who was my PhD guide at TIFR, so he was a phenomenologist who changed to semiconductor physicists. So he always insisted that both theory and experiment are equally important. To be a good experimentalist, we need to
Equally,
do
yes.
equally important theory to support our uh, results. So that importance like actually helped me.
This is something very critical. I'm going to come to Professor Arvind Rengulekar because I have very high regards. In fact, actually, I came to know Gopal through Professor Arvind Rengulekar. I'm going to actually tell that very interesting story very soon. And so now, before we go into the specifics of his lab, I want to just know your transition from Hyderabad to TFR. How did that happen? Because getting into TFR itself is a story among a lot of people, because it's not an easy thing. It's usually a tough thing to really get into the institution as a PhD student. What was your experience, Gopal? How did you make it there?
Okay, it was all people in the university. They told me that it's not easy to get into, right? And just go have fun, right? And Professor Chaturvedi, for example, Subhash Chaturvedi, he said that like,
Mhm.
see, you know all the concepts, right? When you will meet lots of people during these interviews and these entrance exams, whether going to IITs or other places, like you will meet other students. They will say words which you may have never heard, which you won't understand, right? But you know the concept, what they are talking about. You don't know the name. That's the big difference between them and you, right? Have
Nice.
fun,
Mm.
and but be confident. So it was like went to IIT Bombay, gave the entrance exam, then the interview cleared. So I paid the fee there. Then next day was TFR interview. Went there. So we had to leave, get up at 5, and then 6 o'clock we started from IIT, and then went to. A couple of my batchmates were also there. Like so, we went to TFR. So gave the entrance and we got shortlisted, and then the interview happened at my interview started around 7 or 7:30 p.m. Right, and the questions were coming. So it was like Professor Sudhanshu Jha was the chair, and Professor Alakre and others were there, and it was like, "What's your interesting subject?" Optics. Did Professor Agarwal teach you? Yes, he taught 3 courses. Okay. Other than optics, yeah.
Mm.
So it was never like I was bringing them to optics. They were going away, and finally, uh, at some point, like so, the questions were like it was like, what did you study in this one of the courses in photonics, optoelectronics course? So I said we
Mm.
studied electro-optics. Okay. So what is magneto-optics? No, I didn't study magneto-optics. We studied electro-optics. So no, no, it's you replace electric field with magnetic field, and you derive the things like, so what comes out like, so right, would magnetic field affect, or yeah, it does affect. So okay, just write down, okay, the equations for magneto-optics, right? I said like, okay, there is epsilon. I don't remember what is the other one for magnetic reason. Ah, mu. Okay. So then it was like they just wanted to see like whether I'm putting the mu in the denominator. It
Mm.
was interactive, and it just went on and on. Around 8:45, the question was after all this, like I was asked. what's the projectile and the simple projectile, like so at what angle it
Mm.
should be thrown, and 45 degrees. Okay, show that it is 45 degrees will reach the maximum range. So I drew it and then put the components, and then I just rubbed off. It's like, why did you rub off? I said like, look, I'm tired. I started at 5 in the morning, and now it is like 8:45. Right, I'm not in a mood to do. Right, you just equate these horizontal vertical components, and then we'll get the 45 degrees. Right, so I said,
Mm.
okay, but you don't want to do. I said, no, I don't want to do. I'm tired. Like I don't want to do this. Right. So I was like, I came
Wow.
out after.
That's
After all this, I came out, and there used to be one of the admin persons who used to take every student, because you need to do the
huh.
paperwork also. So they used to help us out. So this person was there, and he was Bal Balkrishnan, right? So he later on also became good friend after joined as student. Like so, he's a senior person, very nice guy. Like so, I told him like, look, I'm not getting this. Is how I answered. He said that like, look, please don't worry, right? So uh, think positive and right. So it was like that. Like I thought, I never expected. So from Mumbai, like I went to Kanpur to give in IIT Kanpur. So I got admission there. I paid the
Okay.
fee there. Then went back to hostel in Central University. I got a telegram saying that you are selected in TAF. So it
Wow.
was completely like so. So the reason, like people ask, like why did you join TIFR? I say that there are two reasons. One is Professor Agarwal suggested,
Mm.
actually recommended that go to TIFR, and the second most important reason is that I went to almost every IIT, right, and so many places. TIFR is the only place for me where the question was like, don't you know this kind of thing, or do you know this? It was more like a
Mm.
intellectual challenge, more like, as I said, like so we
Mm.
studied electro-optics. Yeah, you let's derive magneto-optical property, right? So it
Mm.
was like that, and they were helping, and it was more to see how much I can push myself rather than how much I remember or how much I can answer straight away. So that's one thing I keep saying, that
Mm.
that's one big difference between interview. Even today, the TIFR interviews are really fun, even for the students. I mean, you
Yeah.
the student keep answering, the questions keep coming, right? And they push it like they can. I mean, they can go on for an hour and a half, no issues, and on basically one single topic. So it's
Mm.
total fun to. I mean, it's really enjoyable at TIFR.
Wonderful, wonderful. Very nicely described. In fact, I've heard so many students telling, and also kind of resonating with the point what you're making. Especially in the interviews, they do ask questions which are unconventional, many a times thought provoking, and it happens so that that question still remains in the so many people's mind, even if they have not joined, even if they have gone on to do some other research. That question actually remains. Even I kind of recollect uh, in my own experience when I was attending some interviews in for example in Bangalore somewhere. I still vividly remember all questions people have asked. That's something which is very kind of interesting. So now you have joined Professor Arvind Vengulakar's lab. In fact, as I mentioned, when I was moving back to India, right after I just moved in, then I wrote to Professor Vengulekar because his very nice article in Current Science had appeared where he had reviewed some aspects of it, and I just wrote to him, and he replied very nicely. He was such an established person who was already almost about to retire, and he wrote to me that I am about to retire, but there is this very kind of enterprising person, Gopal, who is going to actually be doing this kind of research. He's already been doing this, and that's how I first came to know about your research. Of course, then I later went back and saw that I had read your papers, but I could not connect the person to the research paper. And also one of the very impressive things is this question of ponderomotive forces and other things what he also worked on. I could see that there is some very interesting connections he was also trying to make from his phenomenological kind of perspective. Give us a kind of a picture of Professor Vengulekar. Tell us about him. How was it working in his lab, and kindly the broad lessons of your PhD, which I'm going to also next get into. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So so basically, our batch was called the transition batch in TIFR because that was the batch
Oh,
where we
okay.
were taken as experimental and theory right at the joining time. Right. So then
Oh, okay.
it
Okay.
was right. So 27 of us joined, but only 9 completed eventually because TIFR still has this that. Rigorous coursework the first 2 years, and anybody failing more than one course, so they are asked to leave. So many of us, many of my batchmates, like so they actually either left because they couldn't take the pressure, or they were asked to leave. So and the lab or the guide selection was based on the performance in the coursework. Yeah.
Mm,
So the
mm,
first two students in the batch, so they could select whatever they want, and both my batchmates who were toppers, like so they went to high energy physics. Being the third, so I had open field, so I could select whomever I want. So I wanted to join Professor Vengur because it's the spectroscopy part. Then
mm,
I
mm,
went and talked to him. He said, "Why do you want to join?" So I explained my motivation. Then he said, "Okay, not good enough for me uh, because you may not be exposed to other fields. So talk to everybody in the department and come back to me after that." So I went and talked to everybody
mm,
in the department and then listened to them, and then finally I was still mm, atal, right? So that I want to join him.
mm,
So I went back to him. Then he said, "Okay." Then he asked me again, like, so why? So I had to explain to him that like why I did not like other subjects or other topics and why I prefer this one. So then he said, "Okay." So he's waiting for some project, and once it gets sanctioned, he will take me. So eventually, like I started doing a project, and um the first instance was like I was setting up some experiment which he asked me to, and I worked like so. I had experience in optics lab, so no issues. Like so I was setting up the spectroscopy uh, facility, and then there was a prism which was mounted, and I worked about 2 weeks before that. One day I went and I was trying to realign, so I removed it, and the prism fell down, and it broke one corner, broke. So my senior went and complained that like I broke a prism. I didn't know about it. So then he actually said that like let's go to boss. Right. So I went. Then
mm.
he told me that like look, he broke the prism. So he looked at me and said, like, so can you show me that? So I said, okay, this is it. And this edge is broken, but I can still use this part.
But
So I'm sorry, I was working on it for 2 weeks and nothing happened. I was sure that like 2 weeks it worked, and I didn't check that it was held firmly. So it's my mistake
mm,
anyway. So he said, like, okay, it was absolutely cool. No
mm,
shouting, no
mm,
reprimanding, nothing. He said, "Take care," and that's it. Right. So that was first thing. And he used to come to the office at 9 a.m. And the first thing he used to do is come to the lab and open the door and see. He never once
mm.
told any of us students that he expects us to be there. But 9 a.m.
Nice.
we were there. Right. Experiment may go on till 4 a.m., but I'm there in the lab at 9 a.m. because I know that like he's going to come and ask me what happened the previous day. So these are things which we don't see in present generation. right? Like so
Mm.
it's hard, like so say that like, oh, I work late, so I'm coming at 11 a.m. or after lunch, so because I work late. But that was not an option, or not even in mind that okay, I work late, so it's okay, he may accept me. But no, I mean, because he comes at 9, I have to be there at 9 and then tell him what we have done. So and my PhD was I mean, any student comes, I tell this as a point of importance, is that any one of us, like, so it doesn't matter who, anyone says that like my PhD was a cakewalk and it was went through
Mm.
easily, either they are lying or they have not learned anything, they have not done anything, right? Because
Agree.
every PhD has ups and downs, and it's frustrating, that's part of the training. So it went on, like, so some of my batchmates in material science, they published 17 papers in their 4 years. So after the 2 year coursework, 2 year actual work in the lab, they had 17 publications, including some ridiculous number, 11 PRBs or something like that, right? And I was
Oh my
struggling
god.
for my first paper, right? I was
Mm.
struggling for my first paper, and it was like, uh, I was putting in effort, but it's like everything is set. I was about to take the first reading, and the power went off. So before that, almost 8 months, I've been trying to do first the vacuum pump conks, then you open the vacuum pump, you clean it, then refill with oil. Everything has to be done. Like so, so I say that like, look, I can do plumbing job, I can do flooring job, because I've done everything in the lab. Like so, breaking the stuff to right, taking an iron and making sure that the carpet is done right. So this as a boss, like as a guide, he never expected, but then we wanted, in my own interest, I want to complete in 5 years and go, right? So he Professor Vengalekar was calm and quiet as a big lake, like so, no, never shouted,
Mm.
never raised his voice, and gave all support, right? When month after month was going, and it was like, as I mentioned, like so first the pump conks, then the cryostat had an issue, because my one of the seniors in the PhD, like so he was in a hurry, like so he ramped up the he went to 10K, and then he ramped it up to 400 degrees in just few minutes time. So there was a cigarette paper actually, which is insulating between the heater coil and the sample holder. Like so, that cigarette paper burnt and it contaminated the chamber. So I used to have a lot of issues with the cryostat. You could fix it to some extent. Then about to take, then the spectrometer controller IC blew, right? These are one after other, like the, I mean, in south, because you mentioned, like so they call it the movie difficulties, right? Movie
Mm.
kasta, right? So this is like that. So everything is like, mother is blind, sister is I mean, there's all kinds of things, right? So it's like that, like sequentially one after other. And one day Professor Vengalekar called me to his office and said that I never expressed ever my
Mm.
frustration. He called me and then he said, "Look, we are not theoreticians that we can sit with pen and paper or sit with a computer and do our work. As experimentalists, we are dependent on others. Everything has to
Mm.
work in a coordinated way, and for that, like so, we need to take help from others. Interpersonal skills are important. We need to keep those relations intact, and just maybe less than 10 minutes of pep talk, that's it. And
Nice.
then his way of saying completely whatever needs to be said is done in that short time, and all the frustration is gone. Yeah, okay, this is part of life. Okay, so that way, like, he is
Fabulous.
very thoughtful and very very matured uh, person, as a guide, as a mentor.
Fabulous. Thank you for this beautiful picture what you painted. In fact, even if one reads his papers and some of the papers what Gopal and Vengalekar have written, you can see that kind of depth of understanding, are also that lucid way of thinking, right? That is something I've actually met him only once or twice, and that too quite a number of years ago. And you could already see that, as you mentioned, that mature kind of, scholarly kind of viewpoint is very very high in him. So you also worked on some Exciton dynamics, right at that particular time, when before it became very hot topic. Now it's a kind of an important thing. Semiconductor physics always has been a great place to study Exciton dynamics using lasers. So what was the kind of work you did during your PhD, Gopal? Just give us a very brief overview of your PhD problem.
Right. So the first thing which we started to work on is if you can do condensation, exotonic post instant
Hmm.
condensation
Hmm.
at that time. So I spent almost a year looking at it, like so the density dependent linear and nonlinear photoluminescence measurements. So we couldn't see the transition, and finally, after some uh, theoretical calculations, we realized that we made a mistake in the density which is needed to see those condensation effects. So, but then we just published a small paper out of whatever is was done. Okay. So then
Hmm.
wanted to look at this, as I said, like the dimensionality dependence. When you confine the excitons from bulk to quantum well to quantum wire, how the exciton-exciton interactions or exciton carrier-carrier interactions, how they change. Right. So a lot of this 2D work, which you mentioned, recent importance. So that's
Hmm.
all like if I look at them, they are all like change the material and do measurements which I did. So there's some clever tricks which we used at that time, which is like, for example, if you want to study exciton phonon or electron phonon interaction, so we used as low intensity as possible so that there are very few carriers, so that the carrier
Hmm.
carrier interactions are suppressed. Then we do only the temperature dependence. Then we did both time dependent and frequency dependent. So the line shape analysis and all that we did and compared it with the temporal measurements as well. So both T1, T2 measurements, and so that was mostly the work where we looked at the carrier interactions and carrier dynamics as the confinement changes from bulk to
Changes.
1D nanowire.
Fabulous. In fact, that kind of viewpoint of bringing materials, kind of semiconducting materials, of course, now thanks to also 2D materials and other things, it has been recast into a new platform altogether, including quantum technologies, which I'm going to come to, because you also actually have been one of the pioneers in that field. Uh, Before we actually get into your Japan experience, which I want to also touch upon, one of the hallmark of your research right from the beginning, in the initial part of your career up to this particular stage, is this fantastic kind of bringing together of deep understanding of optics and photonics, of course, and also materials, condensed matter kind of physics and material science. Because whenever one wants to do something very interesting, it is important to bring two things together and look at that interface and understand some processes. In that way, I know, of course, you have very good experience in optics, but I am also very always kind of intrigued by your in-depth understanding of materials, because you also played a significant role in setting up the fabrication facility at TIFR. In fact, many of us consider you as one of the pioneers in this e-beam lithography for photonics. All of us across the whole community, even before when we were trying to understand how to really go about asking questions, you were already preparing such materials in your lab as an independent researcher. We'll come to that part later on. But I want to just know that foundation of where did you get this exposure of doing, high end fabrication along with optics. That is actually one of the most important combinations to bring together. If you can just throw us a light of how you kind of got into that, that would be nice.
So one of the problems, we had a small clean room at TIFR. It was a class 10,000 clean room when I was
Mm,
doing PhD. So we had this Kalsu's
mm,
photolithography system, mask aligner, and then we wanted to study electro-optic um, properties, especially in this cadmium selenide uh, high quality crystals, which were very unique. And they were there's one Dr. Reynolds who made these single crystals of cadmium selenide and given to few people across the world. And
mm,
at that time, like, so most of the studies, whatever was done, was on those crystals at that time. So so Professor Vengalekar said, like, can I do some electro-optic measurements? Right. So for that, I needed to do the bonding and the lithography pads and other things. So the lithography was okay, but then the ball bonding machine which we had was very old and it was not working. So then actually I took out the. I mean, that's one of the fun part of PhD, and especially in TIFR, because we get chance to break things and then refix them. And so I
mm,
actually fixed the bonder, which was almost like at the time a 25-year-old and not working. Right. So I could take out everything, then refix, find the faults, and then fix the whole thing and make it working, and made the initial bonding pads and everything, and did some measurements. Right. So that's how
nice.
I got exposed to the some lithography, and then this bonding and other things. Then when I went to Japan, like, so yes, again I worked on especially for the photonic crystal part. So I did work on electron beam lithography there. So that was one
Mm.
good exposure which I had.
Very, very interesting. Because nowadays, photonics requires that expertise, because one no more just can only think about only the light aspect of it. One should also think about the matter, because that is at the heart of the photonics, where light and matter comes into picture, and they play a very critical role. With this kind of very interesting foundation, you venture into Japan. Few things I have in my mind. I think you could have walked into any lab as a postdoc. You made a decision to go to Japan, Tokyo, which is one of the very high-end laboratories where you went there. But also, I'm interested in your choice, because I am also, very intrigued by Japan, and I've been also visiting that country, and I really have fell in love with that particular place. But I want to know more about that viewpoint from you, because you spent many years there and also really developed a lot of good stuff. I think you also probably, if you wanted, you could have probably settled there also. Give us an overview of that experience, Gopal, the flavor of Japan.
Right. Okay. The why it happened or how it happened is that I was kind of the last work which I did for my PhD was setting up the four-way mixing, degenerate four-way mixing in the reflection
Mm,
geometry because of the semiconductor substrate. So we cannot do in transmission, so we have to do in the reflection geometry. So put two beams. These two beams interfere inside the medium, and then get the refractive index contrast or the concentration gradient. Right. So
mm,
this
mm,
grating uh, reflects part of one of the beams, and then I'm supposed to detect that. Right. So this was actually demonstrated by a German group. It was a PRL 89 something. Right. So that was all I had to go with, and then I wanted to do for T2 measurements. So
mm,
I'm setting up this thing. So I took almost 8 months to get the first signal. And at some point, like, so I could see visually, but then I cannot send it through. When after sending it through the spectrometer, and I was not able to detect in the PMT any signal. Right. So it took, and then I mean, after a lot of struggle, when the signal came, and I was just doing measurements, I mean, So at the end, like, so Professor Vengulekar said that like you generated enough data to have one more PhD, right? So and actually my
Wow.
junior used a lot of that data, analyzing it, and he published a couple of papers from that. Yeah. So
Fantastic.
and
Fantastic.
I was doing that and not writing my thesis. So uh,
Mm,
then one of the I think it was Professor S. Anand, Srinivas Anand from
mm,
KTH. Right? He was alumni of TIFR, so Professor Arora's student.
mm, mm,
So he sent that there is an opening in Japan. Okay. So
mm,
and then that's the only thing. I applied only one place, right? And just because like somebody sent it, okay, I said okay, let me apply, and that has the Bell Labs. All my samples, or most of my thesis samples, are from Bell Labs collaboration. Right? So Bell Labs was part of this femtosecond technology project which I mentioned in Fester Labs. So, but then when I joined, like, so they backed out, and then it was purely Japanese project. But any case, one of the reasons is that like Bell Labs was included in that is part of that project, or was part of that project. Right. So and Professor Wengulaker went to France, and then he said, "Look, at least I want one chapter in 2 weeks, 14 days time. I'm coming back, and I need at least one chapter from you." So he gave me the ultimatum, and I sat and wrote all my chapters excepting for introduction, and I gave it on as soon as he came. Right, all the chapters. So he just cleared them, right? And then in the before he cleared, I wrote the introduction chapter, and I would have spent hardly 1 month or less than a month on the complete thesis and then submission part. That's because like, the
mm,
Japanese offer came, and they gave
mm,
very generous offer at that time, right? So
mm,
I mean the reason for going to Japan was because I didn't apply anywhere else out of I don't know, my ignorance or my laziness. I didn't even think about anything else. This offer was sent by somebody, and then I said, okay, let me try applying. I got it, and then I went there, and it was I didn't realize people question me when, right, why Japan of all the places, right? Senior
mm,
people asked me,
mm,
and I told that like, look, I'm getting about $6,000 a month, and then that's it. No questions asked after that. Right? So then I see that the same people who asked me in a negative way, so they ended up in Japan and spent more than a year there themselves. So it was like so I went like so they were this was in a company atmosphere. The workplace is like
mm,
all the Japanese major industries sent two people each, and from the Japanese government side, so the NEDO, New Energy and
mm,
Industrial Research. So the NEDO hired six of us. So there, like I had one Bulgarian, one Swedish, one Australian, uh, two Chinese, and me. Right, so we are six of us, and the rest are all from different companies. And because
mm,
others are from different companies away from their headquarters, so we had these special privileges that every month we had a special dinner out, and every year, like at least one fully paid trip to autumn trip, we used to call it. The entire lab used to go out, and it was
mm,
total
mm,
fun, and people were all young and away from their homes. So it was a very close knit gang, which we used to have a lot of
mm,
fun. And yeah, the first day I landed up, like, look, I got one paper piece in which it's written something, and I'm supposed to get out of the airport, take a bus, go to Sukuba, and then in the bus station, I'm supposed to show this paper to the taxi driver. He'll take me to the hotel. So I ended up at the hotel around 11 a.m. and I took bath, and around 12, like I was very hungry. So I go downstairs. The restaurant was closed. I understood that it was Sunday and the restaurant was closed. So the lady somehow in the
mm,
reception, so she could conveyed to me that if I go out straight some direction, I may find a restaurant. So I went out walking and I saw this Ali's kebab. I was like, wow, okay,
Mm.
kebab. Okay. So, but then later on, I realized their kebabs are different than what we know. So, in any case, but then that guy also said, like, no, close, close. Okay, so, okay, fine. So, I walked
Mm.
forward and then ended up in a restaurant, which was later I came to know it's a Korean barbecue place. So, I ordered
Mm.
one dish looking at the image, something fish. So, and the platter came raw fish and a small bowl of rice. I don't know what to do with the raw fish, so I just left the whole thing. The waitress tried to uh, tell me something, but I couldn't understand. She couldn't understand. She tried to bring some dictionary, but no, nothing worked. So finally, I had that bowl of rice with salt, and
Uh,
finished with right, and paying some ridiculous amount of bill because it was meant for some three people or something, and right, anyway, so the my boss, Professor Vada, Osamu Vada, he came in the evening and I explained. So before that, like the office secretary, she came and with her
mm.
boyfriend, who was also a colleague at that time. Right? So they both took me out and I said, like, look, I want to buy some bread and butter and jam, like so that I can survive. Right? So they helped me buy those things. Then my boss took me out for dinner, and he was like, "Oh wow, okay, this kind of experience, okay, fine." So then uh, he started eating, and they were explaining. His wife was very nice, right? So she was telling that there are some some funny way of saying things. Like so, there are two kinds of Japanese: the Japanese and
Mm.
Japanese behind the wheel. So these people these
Okay.
days, people are getting very impatient, not being polite at all, like
Mm.
the typical Japanese way. So they are honking and all that. I said like, "Welcome to India." Like
India.
so, so and then she cautioned, "Oh, there will be some nasty young Japanese, basically like punks who are all Americanized, and
Mm.
they may trouble. So keep an eye out when you go or something."
Mm.
Then the dishes came and we were about to eat. So I asked, like, so this is my first time. I don't know. So are there any table manners or something to be followed? So Dr. Vada was an amazing person. So he said that there's only one rule, Gopal. And then he picked his bowl up.
Mm.
He ate his soup like that, and it sound. I said, like, enjoy your meal. And then he kept his bowl back. So
Ah.
it was that way like fun. He taught me how to use the chopsticks. There's one more Chinese friend who helped me learn how to use chopsticks, and so
Mm.
that's
Mm.
how like my, I mean, life began there. People were Japanese were very very. They never called me home. They never came to my house. It was all in the office. Fine. We used to go out for dinners,
Mm.
and every
Mm.
day, like I said, by 6 o'clock it was dinner. So go and come back, and used to work late. So then once I cooked and invited some 4 or 5 of the colleagues home. So I made what we can make, like so dal sambar and some sabji, so and rice.
Mm.
So they were like seeing so many vegetables, like they were very happy. And right, so then after that it was no looking back. Like then they opened up and they started calling me to their homes, and so the personal relations developed, and it was fun.
Mm.
So they were very very friendly and open hearted.
Yeah, that's something quite remarkable because they generally tend to be a little insular, but as they get little more kind of acquaint, they will be really very close to you as it proceeds. Uh, yeah, it's so you stayed there for more than 5 years, right? Or about
Four
five
and a
years
half,
or so?
a little more than 4.5 years.
4.5. So, what was going in your mind, Gopal? Because you could have probably easily stayed there because you were already doing some cutting edge work there. What really motivated you to plan to come back
Th-
to India?
That's again, I should thank Professor Vengurlekar. Actually, uh, Prabhu, my
Hmm.
senior and from TIFR. Like so, he asked me. Uh, people used to joke because the company atmosphere. The if I have to work during the vacation period, so
Hmm.
in Japanese, the New Year and during summers, like so, there are two long vacation periods where everything is shut. So the companies are also shut. Right? So during that time, if I have to work, I have to take permission from the president of the company. Right? So that kind of it's like why bother? Like so, the take initially I used to take it. Then afterwards, it's like I used to come to India. Right? So
Hmm.
instead of staying alone, like so, we had I was part of a Sukuba has lots of foreigners. So there is lots of
Hmm.
there. There's something called friendship club, like so where we used to meet for potluck dinners once a month, and also there is a very good trekking and mountaineering club, Sukuba
Hmm.
walking and
Hmm.
mountaineering club. So we used to go out for treks quite often, and it used to be fun. And but then sometime like I thought like I can come home and it's a similar kind of expenses, so I can go visit family kind of thing. Right? So I used to pass through Mumbai because the Tokyo Mumbai flight was very
Hmm.
convenient. So I used to come to
Yeah.
TIFR. So once Prabhu asked me in one of the trips that, what are your plans? Do you want to come back? So by the time
Hmm.
like NEC, I joined NEC and on a GST fellowship, and my boss there, like so he told me that if the company has given the offer
Hmm.
that if I stayed for 7 years, then they'll take me, absorb me in a higher level. So,
Hmm.
so like okay, fine, good deal. But when Prabhu asked me what are your plans, do you want to come back? I said like okay, why not? I mean, I don't mind coming back. So
Hmm.
he told Professor Vengalekar that I'm interested in coming back. So he wrote to me saying that like I heard that like you want to come back. Yeah, is it true? I
Hmm.
said yeah, yeah, don't mind coming back. So then he said
Hmm.
okay, submit an application, right, that you're interested in. So I wrote an application, and I should thank my Chinese friend Shanglan. So
Hmm.
I wrote it to him and wrote and showed it to him. Then he just put it in the dustbin and said that like, "What nonsense is this?" Right. So then I rewrote and improved on it, and then he said, "Okay, this looks much better." Right. Then he was continuously pushing me. Why do you want to go to India? And that too, why to TIFR?
Hmm.
Like, so go to a smaller place where you can be a king. And if you go to
Hmm.
TIFR or any big place, like you'll be one among others. You won't get the recognition and respect you deserve. And
Hmm.
he was pushing me to apply to Singapore because he was all
Hmm.
kinds of logics, like so that it's only 7% of taxes, and right there's so much. But somehow, okay, I just sent the letter to TIFR, and then they took long time. The process is long. There are 7 steps at TIFR for any applicant. So it went for about a year and a half, and then finally I got the offer. So then I said like, okay, I'll come back and join TIFR.
Yeah, good. It's a good thing for Indian science community because in a very concerted way, uh, in terms of experimental photonics, uh, as far as I remember, your lab was the first one to really have very kind of concrete research interest in plasmonics. Of course, there were other groups who were also a little bit more theoretically oriented. Of course, to be very specific and correct, I should mention that there are also other groups who were looking at some kind of metal nanostructures and other things from either from chemistry viewpoint, or in certain cases probably also a little bit of nonlinear optics. For example, University of Hyderabad also had a very kind of long interest in that. There were also few papers, for example, Dattagupta and Agarwal had come up with this kind of Nicholas and Hull kind of experiments, which they were trying to also kind of interpret in terms of plasmonics and other things. And of course, there was a very rich history of plasmonics in TIFR, many people actually are not aware, but one should be aware that Professor Sudhanshu Jha wrote some very fundamental papers in plasmonics. In fact, unfortunately, there are so many good work which has come out right at in 70s and other times, where it has not been kind of highlighted, because we as researchers probably would be aware of this, but you see any textbook in plasmonics, hardly anybody is citing those papers. And the concrete experiments which probably came out of your lab were actually one of the pioneering experiments in magneto-plasmonics, and also various different things to connect near field optics to plasmonic structures, plasmonic crystals. That is another fabulous area of research what your group has been doing, especially the quasi crystal stuff, which is fascinating, which I'm going to link people to have a look at the references. So did you really think a priori to set this area in terms of experimental viewpoint, Gopal? What were you thinking about setting up when you were moving back? Because there was already good kind of background. Prabhu was already there, who was doing very interesting terahertz, and you brought in this plasmonic thing, especially from an experimental viewpoint. Could you please give us a gist of that?
Right. So in my, I mean, the people tell me that like I'm my fingers are in too many pies, because I did work on continued working on semiconductor physics,
Hmm.
then I started plasmonics, then metamaterials, right? So people tell me that, and I show that my proposal. So when I wrote proposal to TIFR, I mentioned each of these things and said that like I'm interested in working on these things, and the clean room is very much needed, and I'm applying only because there is a proposal to build a clean room at TIFR in the condensed matter physics department. So that's what I mentioned. So I mean, the first thing which I like to say, yes, I mean, there is considerable amount of plasmonic work from the theoretical perspective, as you mentioned, was already
Hmm.
existing in India. So Professor Vengulekar got one sample from Japan. So he went on,
Hmm.
I mean, long term. He was there for almost 2 years in Japan.
Hmm.
So he brought one sample from there, which was a quartz substrate, which is patterned, and then linear grating pattern grooves were made, and then gold was deposited on top. So he was looking at plasmon dynamics in those structures. So I did those measurements uh, um, when he brought the sample. So that was the earliest work where we saw pulse distortion and then correlated it to the plasmon lifetime,
Hmm.
and showed that like we can actually measure the plasmon lifetimes as well from that. Right. So then once I have those, it's a periodic structure, and there are lots of these interesting things which were seen in those. So I like the diffraction spots, and then each of them. So I
Hmm.
measured the line shapes and all that, which I never published, but there is a lot of data on that. So once I started seeing this, I thought like I mean I should our clean room was getting delayed because it was initially envisaged as a separate independent building with massive uh, facilities. So it was not
Hmm.
coming up. So I set up interference lithography to make the periodic structures. So while playing, like, so I just thought about it, saying that, like, okay, this was way back 2006 and 7. So made the
Hmm.
two-dimensional structures as well, not just 1D gratings with interference. I just rotated and then re-exposed to get 2D patterns. Then I got the idea, why not we can make quasi-periodic structures as well. Right. So the idea is to get broadband response from these things. But somehow I never could, almost 2 years, like, so I couldn't get the broadband response from these structures, but whatever we're making with interference lithography. I think it's because they were patterned in the resist on metal, flat metal, and then the pattern is in the photoresist. So the shallow resist depth, the pattern depth was not good enough. So that's what I understand now.
Hmm.
But that's how it started. Then the Nobel Prize to Stretchman was given for the quasi periodic structures. Then I continued with it, and I saw that like in the literature, people tried to get broadband response, and nobody has got. So then that kind of pushed me, and finally we made in holes in gold filling, and we could show for the first time the broadband response, plasmonic excitation in these quasiperiodic structures. So right now, like, I mean, it's continuing. So again, in one of the
Hmm.
talks, like, the Professor Narendra asked me, so you're claiming all these nonlinear effects. We have showed the second harmonic generation and all those. So then he asked, like, so why didn't you do any SERS on this? I said, like, SERS is,
Hmm.
it will happen, right? SERS will be there, enhancement will be there, because plasmonic
Yeah.
effect will be there. So I don't see anything interesting coming out from that, and I don't know where to use it also. Then recently we did some work with IIT Delhi and AIMS, where we showed actually
Hmm.
single molecule detection with quasi-periodic structures. Right? So that's something which they're
Fantastic.
trying
Hmm.
to make it for cotinine for tobacco abstinence. So the tobacco residue is cotinine, which has a longer lifetime compared to nicotine itself. So that we are trying to make it as a sensor for that. So that's the
Sensor.
recent thing which are.
Fabulous. Fabulous. So, this also brings me to your next venture, which you actually took it up as a kind of a challenge, I assume. You are actually a very, very serious researcher, but you also took up the responsibility of of the directorship of National Physical Laboratory, where you are currently the present director. So, what motivated you, Gopal, to go into that? Because it is
Yes.
probably one of the most important laboratories in the country. Because it also has a very direct implication on standards and metrics, and also sensing kind of stuff. I would also want to emphasize a lot of initiatives what you've taken in terms of quantum technologies, which I'm very curious to know about. Could you just give us a flavor of why the transition happened, and what is the kind of system you are working with there, and what are your kind of viewpoints and other things?
So it was again serendipity, right? I had nothing planned. So I was sitting one day after dinner at home, and uh, I mean, I don't know if I can say the name, but
Mm.
it's Professor Bucci Tata, right? He called me and said, "Look, CSR NPL director position is there. So why don't you apply?" I just laughed and said, like, "I have no interest. I'm not interested in it." So he said, like, "Look, all that they have is some one-page form. Check this one, and you need to fill it up and send it." I'm telling you because I called you specifically because somebody wants to nominate you. They have seen your CV and wanted to nominate you. I said, like, look, it doesn't sound uh, I mean, true, because how can anybody see my CV, because it's not even on the web or anywhere. Like I said, like, look, uh, when you gave the science day lecture in the university, we asked you for your CV, and that ended up with this person who wants to
Oh
nominate
man.
you. To date, I do not know who this person who nominated me. Right. So all that I was supposed to do is send the
Okay.
that questionnaire, fill up, and then send it by next day at 10 a.m. So, but I sent it around 12 a.m. No acknowledgement, nothing, and then
Hmm.
finally one day they called me and said that interviews are scheduled, and then I came to know that there were 18 people, because we had some mock to check our presentations and other things. They asked us to join online thing. So there were 18 candidates, and the
Hmm.
interviews went, and uh, the chair was like, "But you're not a metrologist." The other people were sounding positive, but every time somebody sounded positive, but he's not a metrologist. Right? At some point, I said, like, "Yeah, you want to put me in a box? Yes, I'm in that box. I'm not a metrologist. I accept it, but we all do for our research high precision measurement, whether it is fabrication, right? For some of my work, like, so I have to deposit films with 2 nanometer accuracy, right? And then it took 2 years, and then finally we made that optical reflectionless potential profile. It took 2 years to make it, but
Yes.
yes, I mean, so we do like, so some of them, like, so some measurements we need higher precision in angle of incidence, or the wavelength or something or other, like, so we do high precision measurements. It's not that like we are completely averse or unaware of metrology or high precision measurements. So then I just
Mm,
kept quiet. So then finally I got the offer. I was still contemplating, because one of the ways I was told, convinced to send that thing is, the application doesn't mean that like you will get it, because there will be other people also. So you'll be
mm,
interviewed, and just like there's nothing to lose, just send this out. Right? I said, fine, okay. Then Ramki, actually as director, like, so he encouraged me.
mm,
I went and asked him, like, look, I want to your honest suggestion. Like, so you want me to go? He said, like, look, you're doing good. You'll continue to do good in your own research, but if you go there, you
mm,
can do a lot more, and you can leave something, in footprints or whatever, like your
mm,
uh, legacy there, and that place needs some good people to change it back to its
mm,
previous glory. And so that was encouraging. Like, I talked to him 2 3 times, and then he kind of encouraged me to go. So that's how I ended up there. So it's good that, like, I mean, I learned what we know about metrology is literally nothing. So I've been still learning. So the community, metrology
mm,
community, is very very friendly, which is close to me. So working with Professor Vengurlekar, the importance of collaborations uh, is inculcated right in us, because we are not averse. We are open to collaborations. We do not see that collaborations are bad, uh, but there's something which is, I would say, like, not so good with Indian science is, we talk, we collaborate each other, but then when we sit in the committees, we discourage and then we penalize people for
mm,
collaborating, right? Whether it's a career, or whether it is for an award, or even fellowship, something, right? So it's well known, but yeah. So the metrology community, they collaborate. They are very open to each other in supporting each other, whether it is NIST US, or you name it. Like, so I can
mm,
call them up, I can write to them, get their support. Absolutely no hesitation or problems with it. So they actually, like, coming from completely out of metrology background, I was skeptical when I was asked to apply for this CAPM membership. It's an 18-member committee, and the last Indian who got elected was in 23 years ago, and that was Professor ESR
mm.
Gopal from
Gopal.
IASC.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah, there
after
was a
him,
PIB release also, right? If I'm correct, there was a PIB release of
yes.
this. Yeah, yeah. I'm linking that in the show notes. Yeah, one can have a look at that. Yeah.
So it was, I wasn't sure, but then the Australians, Japanese, even the Russians,
Mm,
they supported, they seconded the nomination, and then they nominated and seconded, and then eventually got elected there. So that, I mean, that's a
mm,
support,
mm,
which I would like to say, that the community is really nice. And I mean, from the Indian perspective, like, so the as NMI, when I went in, I saw, I mean, the first 2.5 months I went and met every single person, whether it is scientist or technical officer or technical assistant, just to understand what the problems are and what needs to be fixed. Right. So that helped
mm,
me a lot in learning what the problems are and challenges are, and yeah. So it was some things like, we had this PTB Germany donated a lot of this equipment in 1960s. All our electrical
mm,
and
mm,
metrology facilities, they were still potentiometers and all that, and then the acoustic, the
mm,
standards which we have, was running on a DOS machine. Right? So it was, the clearly funds were needed, and things need to be upgraded. So we did all those
mm,
things. So now some of the facilities which we have proud to say that like our national standards, some of them are actually the top. I mean, if not in the top three, they'll at least be in the top 10 in the world as far as the facilities are concerned. We do not know, but I mean, there are lots of like we can do complete flow, complete vacuum testing, right? All these things are there with us, the technologies and also facilities to calibrate and test these facilities. And that's where like so we invested time and effort on that. Colleagues at NPL were very cooperative. That's one thing which helped us in upgrading these things. So the quantum metrology is something which is world over the next major challenge. So each of the seven SI units are
Yeah.
now redefined in terms of universal constants. So we already have the cesium fountain, which is we're the fifth country in the world to have the indigenous technology to make this fountain-based atomic clock. So that we have revived. We have interferometry-based length standard. Then we have the Candela, the photometry lab, which is there. So the ones which are working on are the Kibble balance for the mass, which is to measure the Planck constant, and acoustic gas thermometry to measure the Boltzmann constant for temperature standard. Then XRCT for the measurement of mole of a silicon sphere. So for the mole definition, that's the Avogadro constant based one. So these three are some things which we are focusing on currently. We are making these things at MP. So then the metrology for quantum technologies is other area. So quantum metrology is these
Mm.
seven redefined SI units, but we also need metrology for quantum technologies, whether it is measuring the single photon, whether it is measuring the efficiency of a single photon detector, the qubit
Mm.
the purity, like even going down to like so people are having these dilution refrigerators from different companies or even from same company but many different ones. Is the temperature really the correct temperature which we are measuring? Right. So the temperature standards are needed to go down to low temperatures. It's we're talking
Mm.
about milli
Mm.
and microkelvins. So these are there are lots of opportunities for us to go in terms of these metrology facilities for quantum technologies. Then the digital metrology is other area where we need to automate things to generate the certificate, to disseminate the certificate. Right. So these digital metrology is other thing which we are focusing on.
Very nice. Uh, it is actually probably one of the most important aspects of doing physics research, because a lot of students generally tend to not get the grasp of this because they probably get carried away with some esoteric aspects. But there is so much of interesting physics in all these measurement methods, techniques, uh, especially for people who are also inclined towards working in laboratories. This is one of the most important areas. Maybe also this requires a little bit more effort on the higher education front, where respective physics departments may have to really emphasize this, because what is the whole point if you cannot measure things precisely? Because a lot of things related to engineering actually comes from these precision measurements, right, including GPS and so many other things. Somehow that connection is missing, and hopefully this will improve. And physics departments may have to do this more aggressively, I suppose, right? Because I think that is one point where we generally tend to get carried away with too much of esoteric aspects, which I'm not at all telling that it is not good, because that is what creates the hype and also interest among students and even among researchers. But this is equally important aspect. For example, quantum technology has been evolving a lot, which is fascinating, but there's also a requirement of this quantum metrology. And measurement is something which we probably have to put a more effort, I suppose, right? Because NPL is kind of taking the leadership, but I think there's a lot of scope for this kind of area to evolve in India.
Okay. I mean, it's sad uh,
Mhm.
to see that, like in engineering, when my some of my uncles, like who are engineers, or cousins who studied
Hmm.
in 70s, 80s, even to some extent 90s. They had metrology as a subject, and that has now come down to even in IITs. When I ask and look
Hmm.
at the syllabus, so it just come down to 2 lectures, maximum 3 lectures of
Yeah.
metrology introduction to students. But this is something because every industry has a quality management system, and metrology is part and parcel of it, right? But the importance, like we're talking about industry complaining that like students who are coming out of Indian universities are not well prepared. So these are the things, like, so we forgotten these syllabus which we had, and which we are not given prominence or importance, as you said, like correctly said, that this is something which we need uh, to we have to reinvent the wheel and put this back in the curriculum.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I hope hoping even students and other people who are listening to this pay more attention to this aspect, because that education starts right from your undergraduate laboratory. Because what Gopal just mentioned about measuring Boltzmann constant, there is an experiment which a lot of our undergrads do, right? Because they can see that there is a specific aspect which is measured with less accuracy, less precision, and you can see the importance, because that can become a calibrated kind of a parameter for measurement of temperature with high precision. And hopefully there's more concerted effort towards that particular aspect of measuring things with a higher accuracy. And also it's a great training for things to be done, right? Because for example, even in the US, where NIST and other places, there have been Nobel Prize winning experiments which have come out of this high
Absolutely.
precision
Yeah.
metrology efforts.
Mm.
uh, s- so it's
Yeah.
not like it
So,
is
I
something
mean,
which
you
is just
mentioned
only
this.
for.
In,
Yeah.
in So you
Yeah.
mentioned NIST, and I should say that again, in terms of the collaborations, NIST actively collaborates. PTB actively collaborates with other university
Mm.
professors. So the NPL UK collaborates. So each of these,
Yeah.
even INRIM in Italy, right, Metas in Switzerland, they're all part of their national quantum mission. The National Metrology Institute,
Mm.
which is just one institute in the entire country, right? But that institute is part and parcel of the quantum missions, but not in India. So in spite of writing
Yeah.
the leaders be, they that you'll anyway do quantum metrology. So that we are not part of it. But this is something which I do not know how to fix it, because I can only say so many times that no, please include us, because whatever we are making,
Yeah.
right? People are selling quantum random number generators with nothing quantum about it. Who is going to certify this? Who is going to test these things? Right. So
Yeah.
we need to have the
Absolutely right.
Metrology Institute, which has the Parliament given mandate anyway. So we need to be given that, but hopefully one day.
True. True. At the heart of any kind of cutting edge technology is the measurement, and without that, one would not be able to really do concrete kind of technology build up, because the standards are the benchmarks which are very critical. Yeah, hopefully, hopefully they will change this. So Gopal, we're going to take a turn which is slightly more in a lighter and a fun side. I would request you to first speak a few words in your mother tongue, describe you about your motivations and why you became a researcher. Just a few words in your mother tongue, which is Telugu, I know. And then we'll also take some recommendations from you, and how do you relax, etc., and your future plans. Yeah.
ఓకే. రైట్. నా పేరు గోపాల్. నేను పాలకొల్లు నుంచి పాలకొల్లులో పుట్టి పెరిగాను. అక్కడే స్కూల్లో చదువుకుని తర్వాత వైఎన్ కాలేజ్‌లో బీఎస్సీ చేశాను. గుంటూరులో నేను 4 ఏళ్ళు చదువుకున్నాను. స్కూల్ 8th నుంచి 12th వరకు అక్కడ ఉన్నాను. తర్వాత వైఎన్ కాలేజ్‌కి వచ్చి తర్వాత సెంట్రల్ యూనివర్సిటీలో. సో, ఆహ్, వైఎన్ కాలేజ్‌లో ఉన్నప్పుడు సైన్స్ మీద ఇంట్రెస్ట్ ఎక్కువ పెరిగింది. తర్వాత సెంట్రల్ యూనివర్సిటీలోకి వచ్చిన తర్వాత అక్కడ ప్రొఫెసర్స్ ఎంకరేజ్మెంట్ దీనివలన ఆప్టిక్స్ మీద దాని మీద ఇంకా ఇంట్రెస్ట్ పెరిగి నేను టీఐఎఫ్ఆర్లో పిహెచ్డి చేశాను. ఆ, ఇది అంటే ఎంత చిన్న ప్లేస్ నుంచి వచ్చినా కానీ ఆ, మన గ్రోత్కి ప్రాబ్లం ఉండదు, మనం ఎంతైనా అచీవ్ చేయొచ్చు. సో అది నేను ఆ, నా ఓన్ ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్ బట్టి చెప్తున్నాను. సో మనకి ప్రతిదీ తెలియాలని లేదు, కానీ ఆ, మనం ఆ, ముందుకు వెళ్తూ ఉంటే మనం ఇంకా తెలుసుకుంటాం. సో మన జ్ఞానం కూడా పెరుగుతుంది మనకి. ఇప్పుడు తెలియకపోయినా కొత్త ప్లేస్కి వెళ్ళినప్పుడు అక్కడి నుంచి అందరి దగ్గర నుంచి మనం తెలుసుకోవచ్చు. అంటే ఇప్పుడు ఆ, ఈ కంప్యూటర్లో గూగుల్లో మనకి అన్ని విషయాలు తెలుస్తాయి. ఆ, ఇదివరకు కన్నా అంటే 20-30 ఏళ్ళ కన్నా ఇప్పుడు బెటర్గా ఉన్నాము. కానీ ఆ, మిగతా వాళ్ళతో మాట్లాడితే ఈ ఫీల్డ్లో ఉన్న వాళ్ళతో మాట్లాడితే మనకి ఎక్కువ విషయాలు తెలుస్తాయి, ఎక్కడికి వెళ్ళచ్చు, ఎలా చేయొచ్చు. ఓకే, ఐ హోప్
ఫ్యాబులస్. నాకు
ఇట్స్
కొంచెం కొంచెం తెలుగు వస్తుంది. I, I
మై
can completely
మై
understand Telugu. Thanks to also, the lipi being the same, and I had some exposure to Telugu when I was growing up. And of course, we can read our languages because Kannada and Telugu have a very similar lipi, and that is another thing. And of course, the great comedy which is present in Telugu cinema is amazing. In fact, I actually learned that, like many things we learn, the languages are learned better in kind of art,
మూవీస్.
right? Because you actually grasp the art. For example, Tyagaraja Kirtanas are all in Telugu. ఎందరో మహానుభావులు అందరికో నా నమన్లు. That is a fabulous kind of rendition.
He
So
wrote, I think,
Gopal, this is
60,000.
yes,
Sorry,
yeah,
he wrote 60,000 songs, or at least
amazing
60,000 are remaining, right, after
remaining.
all the loss.
Oh my word, amazing,
Yes.
amazing. That is one part which we probably have to really emphasize. Make it an authentic kind of projection. That is something. The part of Pratidwani is to do that from a science viewpoint, where people who have really done fabulous work has to be highlighted, not only contemporary but also the historic aspect of it. And this is kind of a small effort in that direction. So Gopal, also tell us how do you relax? Like I know you are a very busy person, having a full-fledged laboratory and a full-fledged institution which is run by you. What are the kind of pathways you take to relax a bit? And is there anything
Right.
specific you
I
do?
mean, I think I would say, like, before my son was born and after my son was born, like, so there is a marked difference. So earlier it was
Okay.
reading books or going for treks or uh, right, so something like that. So but now it's more. So I started. I learned swimming with my son, and I learned guitar
Nice.
with my son. So these things which right, this is a advantage of having a child. And
Absolutely.
right,
Absolutely.
so that,
It
so
it really
now,
makes a
like,
big difference. It makes a yeah, yeah.
so yeah, I love to read, but it's not happening over the last few years, not much. I still keep to trekking and walking. Traveling is other thing which I
Hmm.
love, and as a hobby I do. And yeah, uh, these three keep me occupied, right? And my son, of course, like, so we keep going around exploring different kinds of foods. So that's
Nice.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, I should mention that Gopal has been kind of inspiration to so many of us, because when we were also setting up laboratories, we also consulted him. We still actually look up to him as one of the persons. Few of the people who have appeared on the show, for example, Kasturi and others, have also even worked in his lab. She also mentions about the training she got in Gopal's lab. So many of the people have benefited, and also he has organized some fabulous conferences. I vividly remember some of the global nanophotonics conferences which Gopal has taken initiative. The Meta In conference in Hyderabad 2012 is the first time when I met Gopal in person, and that's also the place where I met Professor Venglekar and had a very nice kind of interaction. And yeah, we're very thankful to you, Gopal, for a lot of things what you've done in terms of the uh, not only just the research aspect, but also growing the community. That is so important. And being a person who has pioneered so many interesting areas, it is very critical to have somebody who is grounded and also accessible, who has also given directions to the field. And I'm sure there will be a lot of other interesting things what you would want to venture into. So what are your kind of plans, Gopal, for next few years? Of course, you are now heading this NPL, which is a very important organization. But in terms of research plans and other directions, you have any particular aspects which you are looking into?
Right. So my current activities are, I mean, I'd say in TIFR, my lab is fully functional. I have students here.
Yeah.
I'm right now in
Mm,
TIFR
mm.
today. Right?
TFI,
So
yeah, yeah.
and I also have students in NPL. So in TIFR, I'm
Mm,
continuing with the focus on light matter interaction, going towards
mm,
non-perturbative regimes. So going towards ultra strong and deep strong coupling regimes where cooperativity effects are seen. Right? So this again based on quasicrystal as the platform, plasmonic quasicrystal,
mm,
and we are looking at either quantum dots or nanodiamonds with single NV centers in each one of them. So as the mechanism, so we can control the density of excitons, for example, and plasmon exciton interaction, and look at these non-perturbative regimes. So that application, as application of this, like, so we're looking at um, directional single photon emitters, the
mm,
quantum
mm,
random number generator. So this is something which we have already demonstrated. We are looking at the emission plasmon mediated enhancement from these structures, the few photon level emission, so which we are using it for quantum random number generator. Okay. So that's one focus area. Then the single photon emission in basically OAM states, so that like we'll have better communication prospects, utilize of this for communication purposes. So that's other thing, and magnetoplasmonics from spintronics perspective. So you're looking at we have seen in specially designed metal gold disc patterns. We saw Verde
mm,
constants as high as any reported in literature so far. That's of the order of like 10 power 6. So this is just in non-magnetic gold metal disc. Like, so we create resonances so that the in-plane Lorentz forces are enhanced. So we're looking at these things, and
nice.
now using these structures, like, so can we inject spin currents in platinum or other heavy
Mm,
metals. So basically for spintronic applications is something which we are looking at TIFR. And in at NPL, I'm more focusing from metrology perspective. So it's a single photon metrology. So we all do this G2 measurement or second order correlation
mm,
measurement with
mm,
beam
mm.
splitter and look
Yeah.
for the Ohm model dip. And we have the dip in the second order correlation. So we say that like it's a few photon depending on the depth to which the dip is. So, but then the line shape itself can be very complex or complicated,
Mm,
right? And people have claimed different attributes, like, so for example, depending on quantum dots or and the system emitter which is used, so they attributed the shape to Stark effect and other things, right? But
mm,
what we see is that, like, so even with light which is weakened with, say, a lot of ND filters, make sure that not more than a single photon come out of a single pulse. So even in those weak light systems, like, so we can generate some Fano like line shapes and all. So what is the origin of this? And also from metrology, like every single component, the uncertainty budget coming from every single component is to be calculated and then taken into account. So when we say like we have a single photon, so we're doing single photon metrology from measurement perspective, from characterizing the single photon detectors. So I'm also working on, one of the students is working on SNSPD, the superconducting nanowire based single photon detector. So we already made the first set of devices. We're trying to look at optimizing the designs and going towards few photon light detection. Then we're also working on silicon photomultipliers, which are array of APDs. So which we have designed with a colleague in high energy physics at TIFR.
Mm.
So now we are trying to fabricate these things within India to uh, make them available as single photon detectors. The other student, my third student, is working on actually Kibble balance. So I'm actively involved in the development of Kibble balance within the country. So this is a metrology perspective as well as my own work at TFR.
TFR. Fabulous, fabulous. So this is something which is very fascinating, and I wish you all the success, and also more, innovative and more interesting results as usual will come out of your laboratory. So thanks a
Thank
lot,
you.
Gopal. Thank you very much for your time and your thoughts.
Yeah,
It has
before
been
before
very
quitting,
yeah.
before quitting, like I have to say that like this is a great job you're doing, right? When I talk to the
Thank you.
reporters and science reporters especially, I say that like you're like historians. You're actually documenting and making these
Yeah,
things
yeah.
available for future, like so it's really a commendable job, like so there are very handful of people even within the country or the world that it's a great job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gopal. Thank you very much. Because the whole point is to have some kind of a oral history archive. This is just a small effort, of course, but people who are really doing interesting research, there has to be some kind of historical documentation. And this is just a small effort. Of course, TFR has done it in very, very interesting way. NCBS also has some fabulous archives. This is just a kind of an online repository, open source, and accessible to anybody who wants to actually take this information. Because in future, surely these information would be very vital to really understand how people worked and how institution evolved and other things. So thank you very much for your time. Thanks a lot, Gopal.
Thank you.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Yeah.
this.
This is Pratidwani, where we try to humanize science with the one and the one only Achanta Venugopal.
Thank you.